How do you go from being a football prodigy, playing alongside NFL legend Tom Brady,
second and goal, Brady, touchdown, Hernandez,
to a troubled athlete facing life in prison for murder? This is the story of Aaron Hernandez. Aaron Hernandez was known to his friends as the guy who made other people laugh, despite having been raised in an abusive household. But his class clown status wasn't the only thing he was remembered for. Aaron's innate talent in sports shone remarkably even at such a young age. His father, Dennis Hernandez, was a local star athlete back in his heyday and was the first one to see potential in his son, pushing him to train hard. Aaron had always thought his father's methods were harsh, but the younger Hernandez thrived under his mentoring. It soon became clear that Aaron was truly born to play on the gridiron. At 16, he was Connecticut's Football Player of the Year and was already setting state records, earning him a much-coveted spot in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl. From there on, Aaron accomplished feats one after another, from a full-ride scholarship to play for Florida Gators and securing the BCS National Championship victory, to receiving a John Mackey Award, all in 3 years. And finally, it came, the 2010 NFL Draft. In the crowd were analysts, reporters, scouts, coaches, and executives. It was time for Aaron to prove himself. There was one problem, though. He had flunked a series of drug tests while playing football in college, and he knew this would hurt his chances. But Aaron was not about to give up. This was something he wanted to do his whole life. With an unshakable resolve, he wrote a letter to the Patriots acknowledging concerns about his marijuana use and offered to take bi-weekly drug tests during his rookie season to prove his commitment. His effort paid off since the Patriots took a gamble and finally drafted him in the 4th round, making him the youngest recruit in the NFL that year. In the Patriots, Aaron shone as a solid tight end, forming a dominant duo with Rob Gronkowski. At this point, he was at the peak of his career, cementing himself as a rising star in the NFL. He had a $40 million contract with a $12.5 million signing bonus. He was gaining so much momentum, everyone thought he'd be unstoppable. That is, until his past eventually caught up to him. Behind Aaron's seemingly faultless facade, a different story was unfolding. Aaron was notorious for hanging out with the wrong crowd even before his NFL days. During his stint in the NFL, however, Aaron's behavior had taken a turn for the worse. He had gone increasingly aggressive, reaching a point where his teammates would avoid him off-field. See, Aaron had maintained his friendships with individuals from his hometown, even the ones with questionable backgrounds. They were his people, and he was not about to let anyone tell him otherwise. And on top of that, his mood swings were growing increasingly unpredictable, enough for people to begin to suspect something was truly wrong with him. Something deeper than just poor habits and bad influences.
Had a locker right next to him, tried to help him, tried talking to him, but at the same time, I don't know. I think it was pretty glaring that there were issues.
It was becoming obvious that as Aaron Hernandez rose among the NFL's best, so did the turmoil that brewed within his mind. He had yet to learn the consequences of his actions, but it would cost Aaron a lot more than his teammates' trust. On the night of June 16, 2013, Aaron texted 2 of his friends from Bristol, Connecticut, Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz, to come to Massachusetts. On that same night, he sent Odin a message asking if he was good to go for hanging out later, which Odin said yes to. Aaron did have plans that night, but not the kind that Odin was thinking. On June 17, 2013, the day of the murder, Aaron hopped into a Nissan Altima at 12:22 a.m., with Wallace and Ortiz tagging along. They drove to Dorchester, Massachusetts to pick Odin up from his house at 12:40 a.m. Things were good when the 4 drove around North Attleboro, doing some catching up, listening to music, and smoking joints. However, what began as a casual conversation turned sour when Aaron started talking about Odin's involvement with individuals that he didn't trust. You see, he was becoming paranoid that Odin would betray him to those people, leading to an argument between the two that left Odin scared for his life. And rightfully so, because Aaron was not about to make him choose. After driving around for about an hour, they eventually pulled up in an industrial park just a mile away from Aaron's own house. Aaron had not calmed down by the time he got out of the car, with Odin and Wallace closely following him. And at 2:30 a.m., gunshots were fired. On June 17, 2013, the body of Odin Lloyd was discovered in an industrial park in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. A witness had found him lying on the ground with 6 gunshot wounds. It wasn't long before investigators quickly found Aaron's connection to the victim. The media coverage became intense as Aaron got indicted on June 26, 2013 for the murder of Odin Lloyd. The case quickly became a national sensation, leaving the public torn between shock and disbelief. Many of his loyal fans and supporters defended him anyway, saying that it's impossible for a successful athlete to get involved in such a violent crime. They took to the streets, showing their solidarity by wearing their Patriots jerseys. Despite the overwhelming support from fans and the media frenzy surrounding the accusations, the investigation deepened, and damnable evidence soon started to surface. The Nissan Altima that was seen in the CCTV footage was found to have been rented under Aaron's name. And further investigation showed that Aaron had destroyed his own security system and hired a house cleaning service the day Lloyd's body was found. Even his phone was already in pieces when turned over. During the entire affair, Aaron was slowly losing endorsements and was barred from using the Patriots' facilities. The name he once built from sweat and tears was slowly falling apart right in front of him. At this point, Aaron Hernandez knew that his glory days were coming to an end. On June 26, 2013, the entire world of football had come to a standstill. Aaron Hernandez came out of his house in North Attleboro, his hands bound together in handcuffs. At that moment, he was no longer an NFL star, but a suspected murderer, coming to pay for his crimes. What came next would mark the beginning of a legal battle that would keep the nation at the edge of their seats. Following his arrest, Aaron was charged with first-degree murder on top of 5 firearm violations. Authorities had denied him bail. Over the next 2 years, the case unfolded in court, drawing intense media scrutiny. But finally, on April 15, 2015, Aaron was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Is the defendant not guilty? Guilty of murder in the first degree or guilty of murder in the second degree?
Guilty of murder in the first degree.
During the time of his arraignment, though, authorities have begun connecting Aaron to another violent crime: the 2012 double homicide of Daniel De Abreu and Safiro Furtado. The 2 men were gunned down in a drive-by shooting after an alleged nightclub altercation in Boston. A witness later came forward, claiming Aaron had pulled the trigger, and because of this, Aaron was again indicted in May 2014 for their double murder. But it wasn't until April 19, 2017 that Aaron was called to the hearing. After some deliberation, he was acquitted of the crimes due to the prosecution's weak and inconsistent evidence. He left the court in high spirits. Many believed that Aaron had finally come into terms with his sentence. On a cold and gloomy morning, just 5 days after the acquittal, a tragic, unimaginable reality took shape. At the Souza Baranowski Correctional Center, a correction officer started making his usual rounds. Noticing something was off in one of the cells, he went to investigate, his mind racing with possibilities. But nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to find. Inside the cell was Aaron Hernandez, hanging from a bedsheet, lifeless.
News this morning, Massachusetts officials say officers found Hernandez dead in his cell early this morning, approximately 3:05 a.m.
All the fame and status he once had from being a star footballer ultimately didn't mean anything. Aaron's ideal life was plummeting fast, and that was the only way he knew how to stop the fall. But his death was not yet the end. A new revelation emerged, one that would challenge the way we understood his downfall. When neuropathologist Dr. Ann McKee examined Aaron's body at the request of his family, her team's findings led to a shocking discovery. Aaron was diagnosed with stage 3 CTE, an advanced stage of a brain disorder that's usually found in people who have suffered repeated head trauma. It was the first time that such a severe form of the disease had been seen in someone as young as the 27-year-old Aaron. The damage to his brain was extensive, particularly in the frontal lobes, which may have contributed to his increasing aggression, impulsivity, paranoia, mood swings, and poor decision-making. The discovery added a new layer of complexity to Aaron's case, which led people to speculate whether it was a result of his abusive childhood or the harsh nature of contact sports. Nevertheless, people are finally giving the long overdue attention to the lasting impact of repeated head trauma in sports like football. But despite this, it did little to restore his reputation. Aaron Hernandez's legacy was completely tarnished by his crimes and subsequent conviction. Once celebrated as a talented NFL star with great potential, his involvement in violent crimes had overshadowed his athletic achievements. In the end, the public's perception of Aaron shifted from admiration to shock and disappointment, as his story became a cautionary tale about wasted potential, poor choices, and the consequences of leading a double life.